Thank you, everybody, for coming to the College Football Betting with Aaron Torres YouTube channel. Before we get to the video that you came here for, if you could do me one quick favor, just click that subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow. I appreciate it more than you know. Also, if you want to, click the little bell notification so you know anytime any of our previews go live. We appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Let's go to a top 20 matchup in the SEC. Actually, a top 15 matchup. Ole Miss at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I don't know if it's surprising or not. I'll leave it up to you. 5-point favorite at home. Over-under set at 53 in this game. It is an 11 a.m. Central kickoff, noon Eastern on ABC, so that's worth noting. It's early in the day. Two very interesting teams, so let's go ahead and dive in. From the Ole Miss side of things, I'll be transparent. I go back to last week. I'm still not totally sure how. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I don't know how Ole Miss lost that game, okay? Up 35-26. We all know the deal. Scored on their first 5 possessions of that game. And then all of a sudden, final 3 possessions get 0 points while Georgia scores 17 unanswered to pull out the win. So 1, Georgia gets the victory. I think 2, what becomes a bigger concern is the carryover effect. You're a quarter away from upsetting Georgia for a second straight year to improve to 7-0, and you're right up there with Texas A&M as the only undefeated team in the SEC. Now you got to go back on the road off of a loss, and it's just a completely different deal. It's just a tough ask of this team to go back on the road. As far as what's going well for Ole Miss, well, listen, up until that final quarter, things were going good all season long. Trinidad Chambliss has been phenomenal. But I also don't think that we can ignore the fact that probably last week was the first game that I would argue overwhelmed feels like a bit of an aggressive word, but just not in a rhythm. I mean, you just look at some of his stat lines from prior to Saturday at Georgia, and you look at what he did against Georgia, 19 of 36 passing, that's 52% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. And then I think as importantly, 9 carries, 42 yards rushing. And Ole Miss, they've been good running the ball, probably not great this year. As a team, really struggled to run the ball against Georgia. 88 yards on the ground. That came on 24 carries for about 3.5 yards per carry. So Ole Miss, they need to bounce back. It's going to be tough to do against Oklahoma. So Oklahoma, I think because of the loss to Texas a few weeks ago, I think quietly everybody kind of just forgot is forgot the wrong word, but we talk about the SEC. A&M's undefeated, Alabama 1 loss, Georgia 1 loss, Ole Miss 1 loss, Tennessee prior to last week had 1 loss, and it feels like Oklahoma's kind of been lost in the shuffle in all of this, playing very well, and it is because of that defense. I mean, they're basically top 5 in basically every single category in college football. Number 1, I think this is interesting. Number 1 total defense. We talk about Ohio State having a historic statistical year. Number 1 in total defense. Number 2 in scoring defense, giving up single digits. You look at some of the games that they've played. 7 points allowed to South Carolina. The 23 to Texas is misleading because remember, Texas had a punt return for a touchdown. So 16 points allowed by the defense, 17 against Auburn, 13 against Michigan. They've been dominant. I think the question becomes, have they been a little too dominant? Because it is worth at least noting, Lane Kiffin, some very interesting comments about this defense, maybe how good they are. Producer Matt, give me a thumbs up. We have the video. All right. Lane Kiffin was asked about this defense earlier in the week, and boy, did he have something interesting to say. Play the sound.
Study of signals. I mean, as I just tell you how it is. I think they do a great job of that. So if you study people really well, tendencies, and then you have enough confidence as a coach to go after those, that seems what he does. It seems like, they've got a really good beat on the plays that are coming when they're called, and they do a great job of going and taking those away. When you look at the Auburn game, I told Hugh after the game watching it, you might want to switch the signals. Like, it looks like they have the plays. The middle safety's running down to steal slants, which is very abnormal.
You may have just answered my next question, but do you get with that in mind? Do you have to kind of shake everything up from a signal standpoint this week, or do you do that every week anyway?
No, we're going to keep our same signals.
I mean, I guess I was wondering, do you do that every week, or is that something that you have to specifically address because of who you're playing?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and competitively, I can't answer that for you.
So there's Lane Kiffin. You know, the end I think was a very interesting conversation with the media guy, but I mean, he basically said without saying that he thinks Oklahoma's stealing signals. Doesn't, you know, listen, with the sign stealing stuff, we went through it with Connor Stallions a few years ago. I don't really care. I just think it was more interesting audio than anything else. But I'll also say this for Oklahoma. As good as the defense is, John Mateer looked much more like the John Mateer that we saw prior to injury last week. And I do think if we're being positive about Oklahoma, really the first time all year that they've been able to effectively run the ball against, you know, a good team. You know, you go back to the Texas game, couldn't run the ball. Michigan couldn't run the ball. Well, on last Saturday, they did have 171 yards rushing, including 101 yards from Torres. Let's go ahead and make the pick for this game. Listen, I think it's easy to always default to the under in Oklahoma games because of how good the defense is. I'm going to throw a little curveball, though. I'm going to actually take Oklahoma -5 because I do like that a little bit more than the under. Why do I like Oklahoma -5? It's a couple things. First of all, I just think it's a bad spot on the schedule for Ole Miss. You know, we see this sometimes in the SEC when you have back-to-back tough road games in tough environments against good teams and you lose that first one. It's so hard sometimes to just pull yourself up off the mat and be ready to play the next week. I'll give you an example that involves Oklahoma. You know, Auburn goes to Oklahoma, easily could have won that game. You know, some might say they should have won that game thanks to the refereeing debacle. But then they got to go to Texas A&M a week later. And, you know, listen, I'm not saying the Auburn offense has at any point been good this year, but it was probably the worst offensive game that they have played all year at Texas A&M. And I just thought it was a body blow game where they played the week before at Oklahoma. They couldn't win. You got to get back on a plane. Then it's a short week. You got to get back on a plane on Friday. And all of a sudden, you know, you're just not ready to play on a Saturday. And I could kind of see the same thing with Ole Miss here. Listen, you were a quarter away from beating Georgia and being what? Number one, probably not number one, but number 2 in the country, number 3 at worst. And instead, you lose that game when you had a double-digit lead at one. I guess it was a 9-point lead, but a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter, and you couldn't hold on. Now you got to go on the road. You got to play the best defense that you have played all year. And the counter to that is also the Ole Miss run defense has not been very good this year, and Oklahoma seems to finally be figuring it out. So if like Oklahoma had, or if Ole Miss had some incredible run defense like a year ago with Walter Nolan and all those guys, maybe I would say Ole Miss could survive. I think this is a bad spot, bad time on the schedule. Give me Oklahoma to win and Oklahoma to cover. I'll say something in the range of, I'll say 28-13, Oklahoma gets the win and Oklahoma gets the cover.